In Jesus' name, amen. Well, I've got a lot to say. I just got back from a couple weeks in Jerusalem, in Israel. I think I got home Monday. Yeah, Monday. And I've been trying to catch up. And by the way, I make notes to myself to like articles and post on X and that type of thing that you might want to read. And I'd send those to Brian to include in the show notes. The problem was I've been gone for a couple weeks and YouTube limits you to 5,000 characters. That's like a term paper, right? And he said I had 11,000 in my links that I sent him this morning, so had to cut some of those back. So I'll have to figure out a way to get those links so people can see. And those are things that I'm probably not even going to get to today. So a couple resources that I want you to be aware of as we go through this. We're going to call this Enforcing the Arsonist. And I think you'll see why I said that earlier. And we talk about, our little wheel of prophecy and the canary in the coal mine type thing that I've photoshopped up. So a couple resources that I want you to be aware of. Is it going okay? Okay. Whenever he comes in that back door, it makes me nervous. So Joel Kramer, Expedition Bible, that's a YouTube channel you should follow. He'll put up a video sometimes about archaeology, and he'll get like 2 million views. Very interesting. So he has a video up about these. Somebody sent me replicas of these. You can see these in some museums. You can see these in the British Museum in London. There's a great book you can get called The Bible in the British Museum. There's a lot of things. These are the Armana letters. So he has a new video up about proof for the conquest. And that's a controversial thing among archaeologists. People say, oh, there's no proof of the conquest. And Joel's like, that's nonsense. I agree with Joel. It happened. And so these letters were written by, for example, the king of Shechem up in the north in Samaria around the time of the conquest to the Pharaoh in Egypt. And there's a series of letters from kings or leaders of cities all over what's now Israel. And they're saying, help, send us people, send us troops. We're being overrun by these Haparu people. And everybody says there's no proof that the Hebrew Israelites ever came into the land around that time. Help us from the Haparus. All these letters say this. It's the Hebrews. Protect us from the Hebrews. They're taking over our city. And it's right at the time of the conquest. So go get Joel's video, Expedition Bible, Proof of the Conquest, and it's very good. And I don't remember who sent me those, but thank you very much. And then there's also this original of this. You can see at Christ Church, or one of the originals of this at Christ Church in the Old City, in their museum or library. This was a publication of the Muslim Waqf, the Hajaman al-Husseini, who worked with Hitler and helping him because I've learned how to eradicate the Jews. And he put out this publication about Al-Haram al-Sharif. That's what they used to call the entire Temple Mount complex. Now what do they call it? Al-Aqsa. They've shifted the narrative, and that's what October 7th is called, Al-Aqsa flood. Everybody talks about Al-Aqsa. Erdogan talks about it. Tomorrow, Al-Aqsa, it's what he plans on conquering. And when you talk to people in the old city of Jerusalem, they'll say, the Turks come here all the time. And they say, when they leave, over half of them say, we're coming back to take it back. So when you see Erdogan rising, and in this publication, it says that the Temple Mount is the site of Solomon's temple cannot be questioned. And now they deny it. But this was published 1924, 101 years ago. And there were a number of publications like this. So if you want to get a copy of that. You can get a publication. So the Hajj Ahmad al-Husseini was an Egyptian, appointed by the British to be the Waqf. He had a nephew. At least it's believed he had a nephew, another Egyptian guy. His name was Yasser Arafat. And he was kicked out and went to Iraq, and helped the revolution in Iraq that was led by the Ba'ath Party. And the guy who had led the revolution there had a nephew named Saddam Hussein. So what you find out in the Middle East is that everything is connected very much. And so we live at this time. So I'm going to go through some of the news of the week. As I said, I was in Israel, traveling around for the last couple weeks. By the way, I will be in Jerusalem next week. And so I may do some updates while I'm in Jerusalem and Israel. 2 weeks from today, I'll be traveling, so there won't be any update in 2 weeks. So you're getting a break here. Enjoy it, because I'll have a lot to talk about when I get back. So the one thing that I think you should take away from what's going on in the world is that everything changes quickly. Nothing is as it seems to be, and if you don't like the way it is, wait a day or two, it'll change. So if you remember, there was a scene at the Chinese Communist Party meeting a couple years ago, and one guy was there to kind of excoriate President Xi of China. He was going to, and all of a sudden, some big goons walked out and drug him off. That was about 2 years ago. Nobody's seen the guy since, by the way. And now there's been a big purge in the upper echelon of the Chinese party. And I think a third of the people that were there last year are not there this year. So what people do is they look at pictures like, oh, look at all these guys. Then they look at the next year and say, okay, who had problems this year getting with Xi's program? They're sort of disappeared, and nobody ever hears from them again. So there's a lot going on. For example, Xi is persecuting Christians pretty strongly right now. He's done a lot to direct who can be the cardinal for the Catholic Church. There's some agreement that the Catholic Church has agreed to, that he essentially gets to appoint a yes man to lead up the Catholic Church. And now he's cracking down on evangelicals and some of the underground churches because he views them as a problem. So, and by the way, I'm waiting for the protests to start in New York and at the various universities that Christians are being persecuted in China, persecuted and killed in Nigeria and other countries and other Islamic countries. I doubt that we're ever going to hear about it. So there's a big election this week coming up in New York. This was a editorial cartoon or something somebody put up about what's happening. Mamdani, he's leading in most polls by 15 to 25 points. It looks like he's going to be elected mayor of New York in another week. That's not a good thing. He is a radical Islamic communist, Marxist, everything that you want to think of when Trevor Loudon talks about the red-green alliance, communism, Marxism, environmentalism. One of the guys who embodies that the most in the world today is this guy running for mayor of New York. And in Israel, they're thinking like, so are all the Orthodox Jews, there's a big community of them in Brooklyn, are they going to leave when Mamdani comes into office? Because he said, I mean, he's anti-Jew, anti-Israel, and there are people planning for a big influx of people making Aliyah in Israel because of what they anticipate is the persecution that's coming. So here's an editorial cartoon somebody put together. Why is this not playing? Oh, there we go. That's a plane with Mamdani on it, with the hammer and sickle. You see that? That's. I thought that was a very appropriate graphic about what's going on in New York. So pray that something happens and people will come to reason. So we're having this issue right now with our government. I'm not happy with the way things are going. I will be right up front with you. I don't like what Trump is doing vis-a-vis Israel with this ceasefire. So I was in Israel for 2 weeks. I was there when Trump came. In fact, we couldn't go to the Israel Museum because it's by the Knesset, and Israel, their way of handling security issues is they just shut everything down. One day there was a shooting on one of the roads into Jerusalem. I think it was kind of a crime-related thing. And so there's 2 roads into Jerusalem from Tel Aviv, and they just shut one of them down for 9 hours to investigate. That, as you can appreciate, sort of backed up traffic. A 50-minute drive became almost 3 hours. So, and both times Trump's been in Jerusalem, I've happened to have been there. So I don't know, is he stalking me? And I don't have a lot about the hostage deal, but I was walking around Jerusalem with a friend, or trying to meet a friend. She said, well, I'm live streaming everything about the hostage release and Trump going to the Knesset to speak. So I contact her a couple hours later. She goes, he's still going. I'm like, welcome to our world today. And so everybody in Israel, to a person, was thrilled to death that the hostages got released. It was a lot of celebration, a lot of rejoicing. But I will also say that I did not meet a single person. Now, I didn't go to Hostage Square where the leftists seem to hang out, but there were some by the Knesset protesting. And they're not really protesting for the hostages. They're protesting Bibi Netanyahu because they don't like him, and they're using the hostages as a way to get at him. But I didn't meet a single person anywhere that was happy with the ceasefire deal. First of all, it's not a deal. So I'm a lawyer. So when you make a contract or agreement with somebody, you have to have a thing called meeting of the minds, an offer and acceptance. And so somebody offers you $25 for something and you accept it, that's a contract or an agreement. If the other person says, no, I want $50 instead of $25, you don't have an agreement. There's no agreement with Hamas. The only thing they agreed to was to release the hostages. They agreed to release all the bodies, and as you can see, here we are a couple weeks later, and they're dragging their feet on that. Oh, well, we don't know where they are. Listen, I don't believe a word that they say. So I'm going to go through some of the aspects of, I've gone through the 20-point plan. 19 of them were never agreed to by Hamas. Other people in the Arab world, they kind of agreed to it, but the problem with dealing with these Muslim governments is they believe that when you're weak, you make an agreement for peace. It's called a hudna. And while you're in a hudna, you'll act like you're at peace while you're building up your forces, and then you can break it when you're strong enough to break it. That's the mindset that you're dealing with. There was a report in one of the surveys this week. Israel right now is ranked as the 10th most powerful country in the world. And that's kind of interesting. It's 10 million people on a little spit of land, and they're more powerful than a lot of other countries that are much, much bigger. But the narrative has become on the right wing in America is that Israel completely controls our government. And that's coming from the right wing and the left wing. The Jews control everything. These are anti-Semitic tropes out of the Protocols of the Elders of Zion. which was a fake forged document that came out of Tsarist Russia to attack Jews. And now it's treated as almost the gospel truth. As I mentioned in the sermon I did first hour, my feed on X is full of Jew hatred. It's unbelievable. I don't know where these people come from, but somebody will post something very anti-Semitic, Jew hatred, whatever you want to call it. The comments that people will make in support of that are even worse. It's great. So the mild people today are like Tucker Carlson and Propagandist Owens and some of the garbage that they're spewing. It's unbelievable, but a lot of it's coming not just from the left wing, which you would kind of expect. It's coming from what I call the woke right. And that's become a problem. So you can see this sort of manifesting itself in the way our politicians act. So the charitable way of looking at what's happened over the past week in Israel with the U.S. government, and by the way, the scripture says in the end, all nations will turn against Jerusalem, against Israel. You're seeing that happen everywhere, and it seems like they don't really have many friends. And so we talk about a remnant of Christianity. There's a remnant of people that support Israel, and they seem to be shrinking day by day. So pretty soon we'll be able to have a conference, and everybody who supports Israel will be able to fit in the room. So what's happening, so people like Steve Bannon and everything, they keep saying, Israel, they can't control us. We're America first. They can't control us. And so Bibi Netanyahu will say, okay, I'm going to take out the Hamas leadership that's in Qatar. How dare you try to drag us into a war? You know, first they say, you need to be an independent country, Israel. Okay, so then Israel acts independently. And what is it? How dare you try to drag us into a war? It's a never-ending cycle of insanity. But so here's from the Jerusalem Post the other day, a friendship like no other, a dependence like never before. New U.S. president has been so openly pro-Israel or left the country with so little room to act as it sees fit. In other words, meaning Israel is increasingly constrained. From the Financial Times, U.S. flexes its diplomatic muscle in Israel. And this is true. You see this happening all the time now, that there's, Israel, you're independent, you can do, but we're going to tell you what to do. Well, no, if you don't want Israel to tell us what to do or try to persuade us, then don't do it to them. It seems to be a two-way street. And what a lot of people don't understand is that Israel's really, and you talk to people down in Judea and Samaria that live in areas known as the West Bank, and there's no Gaza border fence between them and Arab villages. There might be a little fence, but I would say to describe the fence as not highly secure, I probably could get over it. Get over the fence. I see that guy back there going, wow, that's not much. And so what I wanted to do on this tour is spend time in the heartland. So we spent a lot of time in Judea and Samaria, called the West Bank. And we met with people like the mayor of Efrat, members of Knesset. We went down to the farm that Jeremy Gimpel and Ari Abramowitz and some others had started down in the Judea mountains. And Ari came, I should have brought he gave me his hat. He's IDF, he's IDF reserve. And everywhere you go, people are carrying these automatic weapons. Why? Because they need to. They saw what happened in Gaza in the peace-loving kibbutzim along the Gaza border. Those were the peaceniks. Those are the people who thought they could make peace with Gaza, with the people in Gaza. And how did that work out? First day we were there, we went down to Far Aza. I mentioned this first hour, I mentioned it again. On October 7th, Kfar Aza was a kibbutz along the border, agricultural, communal type village. They had 920 people living there on October 7th, 2023. Today, they have 15. People have not come back yet. 68 were killed, 18 taken hostage. As when we were there a couple weeks ago, there were, a little less than 2 weeks ago, there were 2 young men, twins, I believe, that were still held hostage. They've since been released. And by the way, these hostages, when they're released, while a lot of them were taken from the Nova Music Festival site, which we went to, thousands of people there remembering what had happened 2 years before. It was a party. There were drugs and dancing and music, and that they weren't worshiping God down there. But they are now. A lot of them that came back, they're saying that it was this remembrance of what they'd been taught in their youth that kind of sustained them through really over 2 years of really horrendous conditions. I mean, in tunnels underground for 2 years. Maybe one piece of pita bread a day. Just incredible. But the people in Judea and Samaria today are like, we're not going to let that happen to us. So when you're walking around the farm with Ari, he's got an automatic rifle. I went to a Shabbat service down in Efrat, just right on the edge of south edge of Bethlehem. It's a Jewish community. Went to synagogue on Shabbat service. I'm sitting there and a guy comes in and sits down next to me with a Kalashnikov or an AK-47 rifle with the extended clip on it, puts it under a seat. And, it's just sort of like you're not used to that, right? Then the next guy comes in and sits down to me on the other side. He's got the same kind of rifle and puts it under his seat. Now, you do feel safe. And then you look around, there's rabbis up there leading service, and they've got guns on their hips. There's no concealed carry there because that's the way it is. I'm kind of rambling today, by the way. You may have noticed more than usual. So we're walking around with Ari Abramowitz at his farm, Aragot Farms. You can see Ari on the Israel Guys with Luke and Josh Waller up in Samaria. And Ari says, we bought this farm for a reason. And we walk off to the edge of the property, and there is this incredibly steep, deep ravine. And I'm sort of thinking, like, nobody's farming that. The goats can't even climb up and down the ravine. Why did you buy this? He said, because we believed in what the prophets said. The prophets say that there will be a giant earthquake in Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will split in two, and water will flow from under the Temple Mount and flow through that crack in the Mount of Olives all the way down and sweeten the waters, purify the waters of the Dead Sea, and fish will live in there. That ravine is the main tributary through which that water will flow. That's why we bought it. So there's an awakening thing that's going on that I think we need to figure out how we deal with it, because we want to point them to the right place, right? But it's a process, so I think sometimes we want to advance the clock. And so I've been thinking a lot about how do we go about that? But I will tell you, when you talk to them, when you're in the Old Testament, they're as biblical as you are, but there are problems. I've noticed a few problems in the church over the years that we have in not agreeing on what the scriptures say. So I'm not sure how this process goes, but I'm just saying it's very real there. So Trump comes, does, everybody's grabbed. We got the deal, and he's like, we got this deal, we got this agreement. He leaves Jerusalem, he goes to Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, and has this big Peace 2025 conference with a bunch of Arab Islamic countries. And we've got this peace. And I have to tell you, I don't think there is a peace. It didn't really change anything on the ground. And I will tell you that while people were thrilled to death that the hostages were released, I didn't talk to a single person that liked Jared Kushner in the way that this deal is being done. I didn't meet one. Now, I'm sure there are some, like Ivanka Trump. And in Israel, you kind of run into people all the time. So we went through the Western Wall Plaza, and less than an hour later, Jared and Ivanka Trump and Steve Witkoff came to the Western Wall, because it's a small place, and you keep running into people all the time. So what's happened, though, is that I'm going to play you some clips. I'm going to play you an interview of Jared and Steve Witkoff. I don't think they understand what they're dealing with. I'll be honest with you. They may be smart real estate guys. They're certainly richer than I am. But, there's a difference between intelligence and wisdom sometimes, all the time. And I just don't think they understand the issue. But what's happened is they're concerned, and then people in the Trump administration are concerned that Israel's kind of getting out there acting too much in its own interests, and it might affect Trump's deal. And so what you've seen over the last several days is you see this parade of upper echelon U.S. officials coming to Israel. And one commentator, I think on CNN, said they're now babysitting. That's their purpose for their visits, to keep Bibi Netanyahu in line. So you had Witkoff and Kushner came back to Jerusalem. Then you had J.D. Vance, then Marco Rubio. And it's just a parade of guys. And again, some people think, and I think it's a pretty accurate assessment, they're babysitting to keep Netanyahu in line. Netanyahu's facing an election this year. I think right now, if the election was held, he probably would win, even without some of the people in this coalition, because right now the hostages are home and everybody's kind of on this. So J.D. Vance came to Israel the other day, and before he came, or while he was there, a bill was introduced into the Knesset saying Israel was going to exercise sovereignty over Judea and Samaria, the West Bank. Now, I don't have a problem with that. I've been in those areas. I know the problems. I know the geopolitical issues. When we traveled around Samaria, we went up to, I said Jacob's altar first hour. I meant Joshua's altar. That was my mistake. Same family, but they're all related. But so at Joshua's altar, it's near Nablus on Mount Ebal. We went in. We had to go in with an IDF escort in a bulletproof bus because of the area. And as we walked down from where we parked down to Joshua's altar, there are drones flying overhead. And I mean, you're looking at them and they're like following you around. So somebody's watching what's going on, and that's good. But then you tell people in Jerusalem, oh yeah, we went up to Joshua's altar. And are you out of your mind? It's not safe to go up there. And the answer is probably true. It's not. Bill and Tanya Koenig, they went to Joseph's tomb a couple months ago. They had to go in armored personnel carriers into Nablus with IDF escort. That's the reality of the situation. So if Israel wants to exercise sovereignty over that area, it seemed like it would be better than the other way around, than them not exercising sovereignty. So they introduced this bill, and then here was the response of J.D. Vance to that bill when he was in. Well, what do you think of this?
West Bank, sorry, go ahead. We'll do, yeah. The West Bank vote yesterday that took place while you were in the country.
Oh yeah, that was weird. I was sort of confused by that. Now, I actually asked somebody about it, and they told me that it was a symbolic vote, some symbolic vote to recognize or a symbolic vote to annex the West Bank. I mean, what I would say to that is when I asked about it, somebody told me that it was a political stunt, that it had no practical significance. It was purely symbolic. I mean, look, if it was a political stunt, it was a very stupid political stunt, and I personally take some insult to it. The West Bank is not going to be annexed by Israel. The policy of the Trump administration is that the West Bank will not be annexed by Israel. That will continue to be our policy. And if people want to take symbolic votes, they can do that. But we certainly weren't happy about it. Thank you.
And Trump, when he was in Israel, was asked, would you support he says, they're not going to annex the West Bank. I'm not going to allow it. Well, wait a minute. I thought they were a sovereign country. You want them to be a sovereign country, and you don't want them to tell us what to do. Then why are you telling them what to do? Because the concern is it will blow up whatever this thing that they have at this Peace 2025 summit. They don't have a deal. It's fake. I'm sorry. It's not a deal. They got the hostages. Great. And that it pains me to say that. Here's an article from Jerusalem Post. Continuing the fight with a ceasefire now in place, activists shift to the long-term objective, Israel's destruction. By the way, when Trump came out and said there's a ceasefire, all these people who've been protesting and marching everywhere all over the world, hundreds of thousands in London and Sydney, did they take to the streets saying, yay, we have a ceasefire, this is what we wanted, this is what we've been asking for? Not a single one of them went out. The anti-Israel protests continued, and so the Jerusalem Post correctly notes that these are, the long-term objective is the complete total destruction of the state of Israel. And what's happened with our government, the narrative on the right wing in America is Israel's bad. They're controlling everything. They need to be brought in line. And so what you're seeing with the Trump administration is they're trying to change the narrative. So J.D. Vance goes and says, yeah, that was a stupid stunt. Usually when a politician goes to Israel, they go to the Western Wall out of respect. They don't worship the wall, by the way. All you idiots that keep saying, oh, they're going to worship the wall. No, they don't worship the wall. It's a respectful thing that they do. And by the way, it's important, that area is important to us as Christians too, because without it, a lot of what Jesus did doesn't make sense. So they're trying to change the narrative. So this time, J.D. Vance, by the way, he didn't go to the wall. He went to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. And even some guys on the anti-Israel right said, look at him, he's just trying to fake us out by going to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. He's still a Jew supporter and all that, Israel supporter and all that. So what you're seeing in the world today is this massive propaganda war in trying to control the narrative. So they got Bibi Netanyahu, and here's what they asked him about it. When asked if the U.S. is dictating Israeli policy after Trump said he blocked West Bank annexation, Netanyahu replies, they'll always say that. It doesn't matter. We are an independent country. So there's this tension and this back and forth between them on these issues. Trump gave a big interview with Time magazine. Look at some of the quotes from this. Trump's envoys had brokered a deal with mediators from Qatar, Egypt, and Turkey to end 2 years of bombardment and bloodshed. The following Monday, the president told Netanyahu they were going to announce the agreement, and the Israeli premier had to accept it. Bibi, you can't fight the world, Trump told him, recounting their conversation in an interview with Time. You can fight individual battles, but the world is against you. Now, that's an accurate statement from Trump. But the way I view it is they're either an ally or not, and they're literally in the fight of their lives. You cannot go down to the Gaza border and come to any other conclusion. This is a massive fight that they're in. From the Gaza border, the next day we went to Hebron. And at Hebron, we walked down King David Street. All the Arab shops are closed. They've been relocated over to the Arab part of Hebron. Went to a place called the Hadassah House. At the Hadassah House is a little museum memorial to the 1929 Hebron massacre. The Gaza war was instigated by, they're going to tear down Al-Aqsa. In 1929, the Hajj Aman al-Husseini, who I mentioned, the guy who wrote this book, Solomon's Temple, was on the Temple Mount, or his group published it 100 years ago. 1929, he started rumoring that the Jews were going to destroy Al-Aqsa. 68 Jews were killed that day. They were completely driven out of Hebron, their second holiest site, where the patriarchs are buried. And by the way, the story there ends with a group of women whose husbands and fathers had been killed in the massacre, decided to come back and reestablish a Jewish community in Hebron. You hear this story over and over again. From Hebron, we went up to Gush Etzion. It was the same story. Community fought in 1948. They take you, there's a bunker there in the community center that, I don't know how many dozens of people died in the 1948 War of Independence. And it was some families and strong women that came back and reestablished the community. It's the same story everywhere you go. So one of the things we wanted to do on this tour was get people in touch with the people that are the offspring of the people who fought those battles. I mean, it's a very moving thing to watch, to sit there and look at it. So here's another thing Trump says. Let me, I need to blow this up. Netanyahu pushed back, but Trump wasn't having it. He launched into a profanity-laced monologue, cataloging all that he'd done for Israel as president, moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem, recognizing, well, there's a link to the Time interview, but there's clearly space between Trump and Netanyahu in these things. Publicly, they look like they're together, but Trump has very different ideas than Netanyahu. And you would expect that. Trump is the president of the United States. Netanyahu is the prime minister of Israel. It's a pretty amazing interview. Now, of course, we have this Gaza plan. We have these things that have been floating around for a couple of years about they're going to turn Gaza into the Dubai of the Mediterranean. And they're going to build all these things. Jared Kushner has said in interviews, this would make a great place, beachfront property to develop. Kushner's involved in all of this stuff. He's involved in another Muslim country in Albania developing resorts. They have deals with Qatar, he and Steve Witkoff. So Trump has come out and said, we won't annex land. So we're going to play two clips from 60 Minutes. Last Sunday, they interviewed Witkoff and Kushner. And I will try not to interrupt the interview. Here we go.
Well, Leslie, we were on that, I want to say Monday. It was Monday, Jared, right? Yeah, we were Monday, and it was my turn to host the negotiations. So me, Ron Dermer, who's the lead minister in Israel, and Jared were at my home, and we were going through the peace proposals that we were putting on the table. And at the time, we were discussing compromise deals. We were discussing what they called the 10 and 10. 10 hostages come out, 10 get left for the final negotiation. We were discussing a complete deal. And we were sending, Jared was drafting, he had his computer out, and he was drafting, and we were, the three of us, having what I thought was a very productive session. And we were sending these drafts back to the Qataris, who were sitting in the room with...
in Doha.
In Doha, presumably Hamas, and they were going over things. And we came away thinking that we were awful close to a deal. And in fact, I was supposed to go to Paris on Friday and meet Sheikh Mohammed and several other people. We had agreed to that trip, and we came up with this notion that we would let Hamas have a 4.5-day period of time to get back to us as to whether the deal was done or not. And we woke up the next morning to find out that there had been this attack.
Wow.
And of course, I was called by the president.
You had no idea, obviously.
None whatsoever. I think both Jared and I felt, I just feel we felt a little bit betrayed.
Now, I had heard that the president, that he was furious.
I think he felt like the Israelis were getting a little bit out of control in what they were doing, and that it was time to be very strong and stop them from doing things that he felt were not in their long-term interests.
People should understand that Netanyahu, the Israelis, bombed the peacemakers, bombed the negotiating team.
And by the way, Leslie, it had a metastasizing effect because the Qataris were critical to the negotiation, as were the Egyptians and the Turks. And we had lost the confidence of the Qataris.
Right.
And so Hamas went underground, and it was very, very difficult to get to them. And
they were your link to Hamas.
Absolutely.
You were dealing through the Qataris to make your proposals to Hamas.
And it became very, very evident as to how important and how critical that role was.
But there was something that happened that brought the Qataris back in, and that was this phone call that I think President Trump actually forced Netanyahu to make to the Qataris.
I wouldn't call it forced.
You wouldn't?
No, I would
Look
say
that way.
that I was
Becoming a diplomat.
Yeah.
Clearly.
I would say that apology was pivotal. It was the linchpin that got us to the next place. It was really, really important that it happened. And I think we spent, with the president, at his direction, we spent a lot of time discussing it with Dermer, discussing it with Prime Minister Netanyahu, and then the president weighed in.
He was tough with Netanyahu.
President Trump had a great line at a speech in the Knesset where he said, Bibi's very tough, but that's what makes him great. And ultimately, Prime Minister Netanyahu wasn't going to do anything or say anything or agree to anything that he didn't feel comfortable with, but he knew what needed to be done at that moment to make peace, and I give him a lot of credit for meeting the moment and doing what needed to be done in order to get this deal done.
What is infuriating about that interview is she says Israel bombed the peacemakers. They bombed Hamas. Hamas is not and never will be a peacemaker. It is shocking. How much money does she make to be that unintelligent? It's so infuriating. And Witkoff later talked about, well, I got with the Hamas guy and I said, you lost a son in the attack by the Israelis and I lost a son in a drug overdose. What Witkoff did there was he humanized a monster. This is shocking. I'm sorry, I don't like it. And if he was sitting right here, I would tell him to his face. Somebody needs to get a hold of these guys and tell them what they're dealing with. By the way, one alternative view on what happened after the Israeli attack, all of a sudden the deal gets done. Maybe it was Israel doing that. And look, Trump is acting strong. And in Arab Islamic culture, the strong horse is respected. And there are people talking about Trump in that world as the strong horse. Fine. But let Bibi be the strong horse too, because this is a big deal. And so everybody's talking about it. So here's a little bit more of the interview. I'll try to get through it.
And I understand that one of the more right-wing members of his cabinet, Ben Gvir, started to lecture you and yell at you. And
A little bit. But I'll tell you this: when
What
he
was he
invited
saying?
us, when the Prime Minister invited us,
Yeah.
both Jared and I knew that he endorsed the deal, that we were there to help to sell it to the cabinet, to let that cabinet know that we were going to stand behind all aspects of the deal and not do anything that would endanger the security of the Israeli people.
But they did ratify, but after this man gave you two a talking to, yeah.
Want me to tell the story?
It's politics.
So Jared and I are both there, and we got a really good reception from the cabinet. I think, irrespective of where any of them individually stood politically, I think they were grateful that two Americans, on behalf of President Trump, were there to help get this thing to be done, and they were grateful for it, and they expressed that to us. But there was a moment with Mr. Gvir, and I understand it. This is an emotionally charged situation, and people have died, and he's got family members, I think, who might have been impacted in some sort of way, injured. Everyone in Israel knows a hostage or knows someone who has been killed. So it's an emotional issue for everybody, and he was emotional. And it started with me. And
But like this?
I also talked to him about, I talked to Gvir about my boy. I always feel I'm in these situations because my son Andrew puts me in them. And I talked to him about my son. And I wouldn't say he was dismissive, but he was talking about all the death and all the carnage in Israel. And I was saying to him, at some point, you got to let it go. We just can't play the victim all the time. And I was explaining to him how I was able to let it go with regard to my boy. And so I had this sort of moment with him.
Well, part of the plan is the reconstruction, the rebuilding of Gaza.
Watch this.
And you're builders. You've been in real estate. As you said, it's extremely complex. Tell us more about the plan and how much it's going to cost, where's the money going to come from, and who's going to award the contracts? 3 questions.
I think it's going to cost a lot of money.
What's a lot of money?
The estimates are in the $50 billion range. It might be a little bit less. It might be a little bit more. I happen to think that that's not a lot of money in that region. You have governments that are going to jump on in, and
So the Middle East countries are going to provide the money.
You'll see European participation and so forth. I think the beginning of this plan is how to get it going, and that's what me and Jared work on all the time. The money raising, we think, is the easy part. We think that happens relatively quickly, but it's the master plan, and we're working with a group of people who have been working on master plans for the last 2 years.
So there are plans already.
We have plans already. We have a master plan already. And by the way, and Jared's been pushing this, and we're working together on it. And I think if the world saw the progress so far,
Does he
they'd be
look
pretty
uncomfortable?
impressed.
Yeah, so basically over the last couple of years, there's been a lot of organizations that have been trying to determine what happens after the war. What's clear right now is we're very much focused on the humanitarian and the deconfliction to make sure that the aid can get to the people. And
Deconfliction, because they're still shooting over there.
So you have
That's
to
what
make
you-
sure that we're dealing with both sides and sending messages so that you don't let embers become little fires that become forest fires. So we're working on deconfliction, humanitarian aid.
Right.
Okay, I don't even know what to say because I'm afraid I would say something that would be too truthful. I don't like that at all. I'm sorry. And Witkoff continued, look, I'm sorry he lost his son. I know the pain. I can understand that pain. But you don't bring it up with a Hamas guy whose son is a terrorist. And the father is a terrorist. You do not understand what you're dealing with. And so this is what has kind of happened. So here's David Weinberger. We like him because he's a lawyer And he said, blessed be the hostage deal makers, but beware nasty narratives and self-foolery. I think he's exactly right. This Jerusalem Post the other day on Friday. Here's another one. The war with Hamas is not over. That's by Anna. She's a security expert. The need for penalty clauses. There's no consequence to anybody that's involved in this deal from Hamas that I can figure out. Look, if this is the way you negotiate a real estate deal, I want to be in a real estate deal with you. You know, you don't negotiate your real estate deals like this. You're playing with people's lives. And to call it deconfliction, Jared, is a complete you're completely inverting the English language. And that's what I see everywhere I look on this whole conflict is everything is inverted. Everything is upside down and backwards. And sometimes, you got to talk to other people, think like, am I losing my mind? No, you're not losing their mind. They've already lost theirs. And I'm sorry, I just don't think it's working. Now everybody look at Trump. Normalization with Saudi Arabia. We're going to get normalization with Saudi Arabia. So here's a little clip. I've got 2 more clips I want to play. Man. Okay. IDSF, Moshe Davis, and Dan Diker from Jerusalem Center for International Affairs. Used to be Jerusalem Center for Public Affairs, but now it's International Affairs. Talking on the IDSF podcast the other day. I'll just play a minute or 2 of this. Talk about, what do you think of the deal?
Welcome everyone to this briefing brought to you by the Israel Defense and Security Forum, IDSF. It's a great pleasure to sit down today with Dr. Dan Diker from the Jerusalem Center for Security and Foreign Affairs. Dan, you just put out a fantastic article that I want to share with all of our viewers about really what's happening in this ongoing war. So let's just begin. The language we're hearing from the administration right now in the U.S. is that the war is over, and now we're just kind of cleaning things up. But the feeling on the ground here in Israel is very much the contrary. Is this semantics or is this posturing? What is going on right now?
Moshe, thanks for the intro and thanks for the compliment. I'm going to tell my mom that you said that the article was a good one. That'll keep me in good standing in the home on the other side of the Atlantic Ocean. We are in a war of deception, disinformation, and hardcore terror, all 3 in one. The United States, under President Trump, who we must say is really the greatest friend in the White House that Israel has ever had, for his extraordinary support, not only in moving the U.S. Embassy to Jerusalem and supporting Israel's application of Israeli law on the Golan Heights, and also recognizing Judea and Samaria as an inherent indigenous Jewish right for the last 3,600 years. Though sovereignty hasn't yet been applied to those areas, but we definitely have the express support on those issues from the administration. And of course, now the administration and led by President Trump has been an unwavering supporter of Israel's need to be very aggressive, very offensive against Hamas, destroy Hamas, and take very serious kinetic military moves, and the administration has been very strong on that. Now, having said that, President Trump has a vision for a new Middle East. I call it a Trump Middle East, which we saw in May 2025. President comes to the Gulf. He begins with Saudi Arabia. He's welcomed by 12 Arabian Night horses. He is considered by the Saudi-led Arab Muslim world as the Al-Faras Al-Asil, the strong horse, which in Arab Muslim history is a very consequential concept. His role as the strong horse, as he sees it, is to coalesce the entire Middle East around a regional vision, a Trump vision driven by economic power, weaponry, if you will, to create a stable, secure, and prosperous Middle East. He sees that as the ultimate goal, for the Middle East, and he felt that he needed to coalesce, and he could coalesce not only the Gulf, which he did well in 2025, including, ironically, the Saudis and the Qataris that were competing with one another for Trump's attention and investment, attention, and partnership. That's ultimately what Trump sees for the Middle East. Everything else for him, such as the war that is continuing to unfold in a new way of deception, I call it the Purim War. The war that you think is one thing and it's really nafocho, it's really something, as they say, it's the opposite of what it is. Trump is less interested in the details of Gaza, which he sees as a strategic annoyance in order to get to the real lottery, which is this prosperous, Trump-driven, economically fueled global center called the New Middle East under Trump and MBS. So what we're seeing now, and what we have been seeing, is the Trump rhetoric, which is really, we know by its very nature, it lends itself to exaggeration, setting, in his view, a new standard for how the Middle East and the world should see the Middle East. The problem is that the Middle East doesn't work that way. The problem is that the Middle East that is established by warring tribes, clans, and families for the last 1,500 years has been a region awash in these, tribal competition.
Okay, well, you can go to IDSF YouTube channel and get the full thing with Dan Diker. And then also go to, I think the website is jcpa.org, jcpa.org, and get his article, which is pretty good. I don't think I have a link in our show notes for that one. But and here's Yaakov Katz in the Jerusalem Post on Friday. Is Gaza on its way to becoming Lebanon? Is it really a peace? So I'm going to play a clip now of Michelle Bachmann. She was on stage with Tony Perkins from the Family Research Council and Jack Hibbs. This might have been at Calvary Chapel, Chino Hills. And I'm only playing it because I think that, I know Michelle, and I think she deserves credit for what she said. And if she's talking, I don't have to talk. So, but here's what she had to say. This was a few days ago, talking about what's going on.
The main thing for believers is to know your Bible, because the Lord tells us so much about what's going to happen with Israel. We know that he neither slumbers nor sleeps. We know that his strong right hand preserves them. We know with Ezekiel 38 that nations will come against them, but God will save them, and the Jewish people will then turn to the Lord. So we actually have quite a bit of information, but we also are told that as believers, it's our job to pray for Israel, to pray for the peace of Jerusalem. And as Pastor Jack taught us last night, that is praying for the coming of Messiah when we pray for the peace. And those will prosper who love thee. So we have to stay in the Word and know the Word and obey the Word when it comes to Israel. Because when you read the Word, Israel's in every part. It's from the beginning of the Bible all the way through Revelation. Yes. And so the number one key theme, you're a pastor, so, and I'm not, so, but the key theme of the Bible, as I read it, is the covenant. That's the covenant that God gave, because God is the Redeemer, and the scarlet thread of redemption runs through every bit of the Bible, and it's tied to Israel, because the covenant is God gave a land and a people to the land. For what? For the purpose of blessing all families on earth. We're blessed as individuals. We're blessed as nations if we bless Israel. And then concomitantly, if we curse Israel, we're cursed as individuals and we're cursed as nations. And so as a member of Congress, sitting on the Intelligence Committee, I got this information. I could not share it with people, as you said, but I knew that the reason why I was there is because I was filled with the Holy Spirit. And so the Holy Spirit would give me wisdom about what I was hearing. A lot of it was lies. That was during the Obama years. And we would have the FBI, the leader of the FBI, leader of the CIA, director of National Intelligence. Very small committee. Nothing was ever on TV. but we would hear the classified secrets of the nation all day long. And I knew the Holy Spirit would show me different lies. And I had other people come in to brief me privately who knew what was going on, who would confirm, deny, whatever. And so it was a very unique perch to have for a period of time. And I'm extremely grateful for Saudi Arabia and with Qatar, because Qatar is the number one funder of terrorism in the world. The number one nation state of terrorism in the world is Iran. So they're twin nations that are twin partners in terror. Iran is the chief sponsor of terrorism. Qatar is the chief funder. You need to know this about Qatar. Qatar is only 330,000 people. That's it. It's the size of Pittsburgh. That's Qatar. They have 2 million slaves that work for them. They take their passports away from them, but it's only 330,000 people. So why are they such smarty pants, Qatar? It's because they have money. They control 14% of the natural gas in the world, 330,000 people. These are the richest people in the world in Qatar, some of the richest. And so one thing that I do know, they believe very strongly in political Islam. And so they are all about advancing, conquering the world for Islam. They're very committed. So they put their money where their mouth is. They're the chief propagandists in the world. So then what happened in the last few months from America? President Trump's first foreign policy trip was to meet with Qatar, with Saudi Arabia. Of the 19 hijackers who took down the Twin Towers and the Pentagon and Flight 93, 17 of the 19 were Saudis. So we're trying to have a relationship with the Saudis and the Qataris and Syria. The self-appointed president of Syria was number 4 on the terror watch list. We were offering $10 million for the scalp of this guy who appointed himself the head of Syria. And when President Trump went over, this terrorist put on a suit, trimmed his beard, changed his clothes, and President Trump's in a photo shaking hands with this guy. And I just thought, this is a little shocking to me. You normally don't see something like this. But there's been a lot of private deals done, financial deals with people who are involved in foreign policy. This is very unusual. If you have Qatar's junior business partners conducting American foreign policy with them, especially regarding Israel, I've never seen anything like this before. So I'm standing back trying to watch what's going on. So then the plan comes out, and this made all the bells go off in my head, because contained with the plan is the understanding that Israel, that by the way, they were within 2 weeks of winning this war with Hamas. They already controlled 80% of Gaza. They were just right there coming in for the victory. Go back to World War II. We soundly defeated Imperial Japan, soundly defeated Nazi Germany. So when that happened, they're clear winner, clear loser. That's what you need in the Middle East for the Arab mind.
That's right.
The Arab mind needs to know there's a clear winner, clear loser, and by the way, the loser loses land. That's how the Arab mind works. So just about as Israel is reaching the goalpost, in comes our envoys, Witkoff and Jared Kushner, and say, wait, stop it. You can't win. Sorry, we're not going to let you win. And so now we're going to have a ceasefire. And now we're going to negotiate. And in the negotiation, Israel, you're not getting control over the land. You're not getting it. And by the way, if the Arabs do everything right, there's a hint they might get their own state out of this deal. Judea, Samaria, and maybe Gaza for their own country. I mean, this is like shocking stuff. Absolute barbarians, murdering, raping barbarians. They're going to get rewarded, and Israel's going to get what? 20 emaciated people back? That's what they're getting out of the deal? 20 emaciated people and dead corpses? That's the deal they're getting after they've lost the lives of 2,500 people in 2 years in this nation, when we saw one miracle from the hand of God after another, week after week after week, you saw the miraculous hand of Almighty God win and defeat Hezbollah, defeat Iran, defeat in Yemen, defeat every enemy on 7 front wars. We watched the Bible play out for the last 2 years, and God was victorious over Israel's enemies. And just as we have the weakest of all enemies, Hamas, and Israel's about to go and defeat them, because again, Israel is handcuffed. We, the United States, we were the bad guys for the last 2 years. Under the Biden administration, America handcuffed Israel and told them, you're not allowed to win. You can't win. And we denied them ammunition. We denied them weapons. We made Israel's life miserable. That was under Joe Biden. Then when President Trump came in, it took a long time to ramp up to get them the weapons and the ammunition. But then weirdly, out of nowhere, Jared Kushner re-enters the scene. What had he been doing? He struck a $2.5 billion deal with the Saudis and the Qataris when President Trump left office the first time. Okay, that's his thing. That's what he's doing. But you're going to bring him back in to negotiate the deal? Somebody who has financial arrangements on the line and is a junior business partner of Saudi Arabia that's clearly been involved in terrorism against the United States, and Qatar, which is actively involved in terrorism. And you should know this, by the way. You wonder why American students, Christians, conservatives have turned against Israel? I'll tell you why. It's because for the last 2 years, it's documented, Qatar has spent over $200 billion in America targeting your kids and targeting you. They spent it on American newsrooms, on influencers, and in academic institutions. So all those riots at Columbia University paid for courtesy of Qatar. Not just Soros, Qatar. Okay, so why is American policy that we're going to allow that? Why is it that 2 weeks ago, President Trump announced an executive order that we, the United States, are going to give a NATO-type guarantee to Qatar? Anybody who attacks Qatar, America is going to defend Qatar. In what universe? Why? This just came out. Just this week it came out. I love Pete Hegseth. Went to church with him since he was in high school. Beautiful believer. But he had a meeting where he was with, I think, his counterpart from Qatar, saying that now we are going to host Qatari F-15s in Boise, Idaho, on an American air base. So why are we rewarding the chief funder of terrorism, the nation that has housed and hosted Hamas and the Muslim Brotherhood, a radical terrorist organization? Right. Why are we rewarding them when their goal is, and they've been propagandizing our students against Israel? Why are we doing this? So I'm asking these questions and thinking, I don't know, I'm looking at this 20-point plan, and they're talking about taking away Israel's land, which would violate Joel chapter 3, that's right, verses 1 through 3, and perhaps take away control, or at least at minimum, allowing Israel the right to to annex, which means to put their sovereignty over Judea, Samaria, which since 1967, Israel owned Gaza and they've owned Judea, Samaria. So under international law, this is their land. And now it looks like under the Trump plan, the plan is saying, yeah, Israel, you've owned it since 67, but Gaza, we're going to sever that off and we're going to give it to Qatar. And we're going to give it to Saudi Arabia. And we're going to give it to all these wealthy Arabs. Right. You paid the blood and treasure, but we're giving it to them. In what universe? And Judea, Samaria. In what universe? True. So I'm looking at this thinking, oh, this isn't political. This is biblical. And so what's going to happen to the United States of America? Because God is no respecter of persons. We will not mock him when it comes to his people. And again, Pastor Jack has been brilliant to teach his congregation about the times that we're living in. These are prophetic days. As we're looking at all these convergence of events that are happening that the Bible predicts, This is when we want to sit up and fly right and make sure that we're part of the 5 virgins with full oil lamps right now, because the King is coming.
That's right.
So we'll make Michelle the guest updater this week, and if you ever, I've met her and talked to her. And she's just this little tiny thing, like 5 foot, maybe 5'1". I don't know. But did she make her points? Yeah. So she agreed. Michelle, what do you think? And then 15 minutes later, it's like, okay, anything else? And but I agree with every one of the points she made, and I've tried to make these points today. And it's everything I saw in Israel, and I think it's where a lot of the Israeli people are, both Jew and Arab, by the way. I have every trip to Israel is sort of a life-altering, eye-opening experience, and this one was certainly that on steroids, so to speak. It's so just a couple more things. So here, Jonathan Spire has a good article. Don't have time to go through it. Last pages of the 2-year war pass into history, and another chapter begins. And what's going to happen? And Jonathan's been writing about. So we're 2 years into this. Is it over? It's not over. Nobody that I met believes that it's over. There's still a lot of work to do. Gideon Sar. This was another thing too. This is noted in an article the other day on Friday in Jerusalem Post. Freed hostages, released terrorists seen as equals. So they get 20 hostages back. They're emaciated. The reunion videos are just phenomenal to watch. Just find them and just doom scroll through them, as we call it. Just watch them over and over again because they're very moving. One guy came back, proposed to his girlfriend after over 700 days in captivity. And but they released 2,000 terrorists. And some of these people, you go to Gush Etzion and Efrat, and the Arab villages right next to them are getting terrorists from this release. And why do they carry Kalashnikov rifles around? Because of just what happened. And they said that they would expect, with this number of people, terrorists released, based on historical precedent and statistics, that about 20 Israelis are going to get killed, at least. That's a real thing that they live with every day. Gideon Sar, I think it's John Spencer, a British military expert, or maybe he's a U.S. military expert at West Point. 60% of the tunnels in Gaza are still intact. And whereas they estimated there were 300 miles, now they are pretty sure there are 600 miles of tunnels in Gaza. That's what you're dealing with. And so the question is, Hamas has come out, now with the agreement, they're executing people. Memory has a couple good articles. This is a Islamic imam who's writing, and look at the imagery that he puts up, though. See the rifle with the 7 in between? That means October 7th up there. And so he says, rejoice in goodness and you will find it. October 7th, 2023, the Battle of Al-Aqsa flood began. And after 2 years, October 7th, 2025, the world began negotiating with Hamas to stop the war. And after 2 years, 2 years into the future, October 7th, 2027 will be the liberation of Al-Aqsa, God willing. Keep this tweet and pray for mercy upon Sheikh Ahmed Yassin. He gave a prophecy about 18 years ago, that in 20 years, Israel would be done in 2027. So this guy's posting all these things, and look at the imagery that he uses in his tweets. There will be no peace until the stones speak. Jerusalem is being Judaized. Al-Aqsa is being stormed. Gaza is being besieged. By the way, I was up on the Temple Mount 2 weeks ago. And here comes a group of Orthodox Jews walking around the perimeter, singing, clapping. This been there before. I've never seen this in person. And by the way, a friend of mine in Jerusalem says, you want proof? There's this theory that the temple was in the city of David. The theory is nonsense. First of all, if it had been there, there'd be all kinds of debris down there. And they've excavating, they haven't found anything. So, when you knock down a temple, you don't drag the debris away, because if you've seen the rocks, the stones that they're big and they're heavy. By the way, you drive up through the central highlands of Israel. Every mountainside, every hillside is terraced for farming. And then you walk through those areas and these rocks, it's like, how did they do this without, bulldozers and cranes and all this other stuff? They're probably in better shape than we were, is a conclusion. But so they're saying they're storming Al-Aqsa. So my friend says, you want proof that there was no temple, or that there was no stone left standing at the temple, on the Temple Mount? Watch the Orthodox Jews when they come up here. What do? They walk all the way around the outside. If they knew where the stones were, they would get closer, but they stay on the outside. So he says that's proof that there was no stone left standing on another that we know the location of, because they want to be careful. Makes sense to me. By the way, you can go around the Temple Mount. There are logs from when Al-Aqsa got destroyed back in the 20s in an earthquake. There are logs sitting right there under a tarp. They're under, I guess, 24/7 security. They've sampled those. 7 of those dated 2,000 years ago, the time of Herod's temple. They're cedars of Lebanon. One of them's dated 3,000 years ago, the time of Solomon. They're right there on the Temple Mount. I took my group over and showed it to them, and you can see them sitting there. So let's see. The ascension of all leaders is among the prices offered in the cause of liberating one of the 3 honored mosques in Islam. That's a total lie, to which the seal of messengers was taken on the night journey. It's a total, complete lie. It never really came up until about 50, 60 years ago. Why? When Israel got the Temple Mount back, then all of a sudden, that's our 3rd holiest site. And then he references in this article that he wrote a couple months ago that, we're gonna take everything back by 2027. That what happened on October 7th, 2023 was the first step in the process. So, down at the bottom, I do not deny or forget it until the flood of Al-Aqsa occurred on October 7th. 2 years later, October 7th, the world sat down to negotiate with Hamas to stop the war. Then the gospel echoed in myself, the good news, and my tongue, and I waited for it on October 7th, 2027. That's what they're expecting. This is an Islamic holy guy. And so you can see how they put the imagery of Al-Aqsa, or the Dome of the Rock. I'm sorry, that's not Al-Aqsa. It's not even a mosque, for crying out loud. And then they said this, look, we got the golden calf now. Who's the one on the right? That's Trump. So, let's see. I've got 2 more. Well, I'm going to try to limit myself to 2 more. U.S. pushes to disarm Hamas and rebuild Gaza. This from the Jordanian newspaper. And then Memory has a good thing where they went through and they looked at things that Erdogan has said. What's the craziest thing of this Trump plan? Who's going to be overseeing the rebuilding of Gaza? Qatar and Turkey, the biggest funder of Muslim Brotherhood and the biggest political pusher of Muslim Brotherhood in the world. And this is what Erdogan said. Well, this is from the newspapers from 2 years ago. Erdogan was saying Israel is a terrorist state and their end is near. And he's calling for the destruction of Israel. We expect the organization to dissolve itself. We don't have unlimited time, he said. This is 2 years ago. Our state has done its part by ensuring that the call was made. Now it is the organization's turn, that's Israel, the entity's turn to comply with the call without fail. We do not have unlimited time or tolerance in this matter. This was during a Muslim prayer service during the EID, I don't know how you say it, prayer at a mosque in Turkey 2 years ago. Okay. Oh, this is the last thing I promise. So there's a picture. This is Trump meeting with the Emir of Qatar on his way to Malaysia or someplace to sign a big peace agreement, Thailand or something. And here's what the exchange was. So the Emir came on Air Force One to meet with Trump, and this is what was said.
I'm starting because you're in my country, so I want to welcome you, Mr. President. And as soon as I found out that he's coming to refuel, I said, I'm not going to allow him to take off unless I come and say hello to him. So thank you very much, Mr. President, and it's always good to see you.
Well, the Emir is one of the great rulers of the world, not just the Middle East. He's beloved and respected by his country. I don't know what's more important, being beloved or respected?
Both.
You have a preference? Because you have both. You're one of the few. And the Prime Minister has been my friend and a friend to the world. And we've done a lot together in the last, especially in the last year. What we've done is incredible. Peace to the Middle East. And they were a very big factor in it. So I just want to thank you. I was thinking, we're landing here, we're going to fuel up, and it's such an honor to have you on the plane. I know you don't do this often.
Never, first time.
I don't think he's ever done this, actually. But it's an honor. We have a great...
So I don't know, Amy Mack at Rare Foundation, go follow her at Amy Mack. She does a great job tracking this Islamic thing that's going on. By the way, we think it's over there. It's coming here. Do you know that in a week, the mayor of New York City could be one of these people? So if you've never been to New York, don't go. I'm serious. I don't think it's going to be safe. Qatar is not an ally, she says. It is the ATM of global jihad. Even Trump said this. And so, she got 3 long tweets, and what are we doing? We're going there and calling them the peacemaker now. I think it's insane. I don't think it ends well. So pray for me. I'll be in Israel in a week, having some meetings with different people and hooking up with some other people. And as I have time, I'll try to put an update up. And then 2 weeks I won't be here, so I'll be traveling back. So, by the way, I feel safe in Jerusalem, by the way. Although it's strange. We were up in Kiryat Shimona, up near the Lebanon border. Stopped at McDonald's. I thought, I'll get a Big Mac. You can't get Big Mac with cheese on it. A Big Mac without cheese is not a Big Mac. I'm sorry. Don't call it a Big Mac. And then I thought, well, I'll get an ice cream cone. It's kosher. So you have to wait a while and do that on a separate order, the ice cream cone. I'm asking God about that one, okay, because I don't think they're interpreting that one correctly. So, but anyway, let's pray. Lord, I just pray you help us to be sensitive and paying attention to the times in which we live. Lord, pray that you'll give us opportunities to share the gospel with those around us as we watch these things unfold in front of us. Bless us this week. In Jesus' name, amen.